following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yo, Philly, how yous doing? Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. I'm Bill Kashatus, your host on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Amateur baseball is our subject, and it's much more challenging today than it was even 10 years ago. We're not just talking about the level of on-field competition either. A talented high school player must decide whether he wants to commit strictly to baseball or to play other sports. Coaches, parents, and teammates often influence that decision, and the dividends for dedicating oneself to baseball can be great for the very best student athletes. At the top of the list are college scholarships and being selected by a major league team in the June amateur draft. But that not only requires exceptional ability, also the opportunity and good fortune. Consider these statistics from the NCAA clearinghouse. At the Division I level, a head coach has only 11.7 full scholarships. At the Division II level, there are 9 full scholarships per team. And Division III doesn't even award athletic scholarships. Chances are only slightly better if you apply to one of the few colleges affiliated with the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. NAIA schools have 12 scholarships. The best shot at a scholarship is at a fully funded junior college, which can offer up to 24 scholarships. Regardless of where you go, the coaches divide those scholarships up any way they choose. But you're never told that there are approximately 50,000 college baseball players who are competing for all those scholarships. Getting drafted by an MLB team is even more difficult. Of the 492,000 high school baseball players in this nation, approximately 1 in 200, or 0.5%, will eventually be drafted by an MLB team. If you can play college ball, the odds of getting drafted are slim. Less than 11 in 100, or about 10.5% of NCAA senior players will get drafted by an MLB team this summer. My guest, Brendon Little, the Chicago Cubs' first-round pick in the June 2017 amateur draft, is one of those rare student athletes who was not only awarded a baseball scholarship to a D1 school, but also drafted by 2 MLB teams. The first time came out of high school by the San Francisco Giants in 2015 and again by the Cubs in 2017. Brendon grew up in Berwyn, where I met him when he was a little leaguer and had the privilege of coaching him in American Legion. He played his high school ball at Conestoga before committing to the University of North Carolina. Currently, he pitches in the Chicago Cubs farm system. Welcome to the podcast, Brendon. It's great to have you.
Hi, thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
You come from a baseball family. Your father, Jim, coached Little League and was a very successful coach, and then he coached at some American Legion baseball. Your older brothers, Austin and Jordan, played at Conestoga High School, and Austin pitched the Pioneers to their first ever Pennsylvania Class 4A state title in 2011. Where did you develop your love of the game? From your father, your older brothers, or all 3 of them?
Yeah, I just think it has to be from all 3 of them. Growing up, I always went to all their games, and I knew that when the time came, I would be another player under my father. So he coached both my brothers and coached me as well. So it was just kind of my turn to kind of climb the ranks through the Little League and then on to high school baseball at Conestoga. So definitely it was a family event.
Now, you were the youngest of the 3. I'd imagine you had some pressure, particularly from Austin after he pitched the Pioneers to that state title in 2011, especially since you ended up taking the Pioneers back there a couple years later. How'd your brothers treat you?
It's funny. They'll even still bring it up sometimes how my brother Austin, how he managed to get the win, or how his team won the title and my team unfortunately didn't. So they definitely still bring it up looking back on it. But, we're all super excited to get back to the state championship. It was definitely a really big deal and a really exciting time. So they were both very supportive all the way through. Managed to come out and watch what ended up being a pretty exciting game.
Mm-hmm. Now, you played your little league at Berwyn-Paoli, and that league is known for many of its fine coaches and a great facility. In general, so many of the kids who played little league today never go on to play Legion or high school ball because they don't have the same kind of experience. Tell us a little bit about your experience at Berwyn-Paoli and how it inspired your interest in the game and how it enabled you to go on to middle school and high school baseball.
Yeah, I grew up playing at Field of Dreams, and it was just a great facility. I just felt they did a great job keeping the fields in order. You know, we had some pretty dedicated people who always drug the field, kept them clean, and just made sure that they were, you know, able to be played on. So not only were the fields very well maintained, but we had great facilities, you know, enough batting cages to go over anytime you wanted to. But I just think so much of it was just, you know, it was a pretty close community. We'd have like picture day where they'd throw up, what are those bouncy houses, like a rock wall. Like it was just an event in the community. So it just made me want to keep going back to the fields every time I could and just spend as much time there as I could. So I think just being around the game so much as I was with two older brothers and a lot of friends who I met throughout baseball, I just kept wanting to go back to the game, go back to the fields, and keep playing the sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you came around at a time, well, so did Austin and Jordan, when there was a group of dads who really loved the game. I mean, your dad, Dave Phelan, you know, other dads really were keen about teaching the game, you know, and how to play it. And that was a particularly successful period of time for Berwyn-Paoli, and the program really turned out a lot of very good high school players, and many went on to college too. But you also played other sports. I mean, I remember you played at least rec soccer, but by the time you were in high school, you committed to baseball, right?
Right, yeah. Yes,
So,
I played soccer growing up. I played football for a year and basketball up until high school.
mm-hmm. So then you pretty much committed to baseball, I mean, with terms of off-season training, playing fall ball. Looking back, was that helpful, or would you, if you had to do over again, concentrate on baseball?
I think it was helpful just because I was able to, you know, really focus on my off-season training, especially given my position as a pitcher where a lot of it was I was able to focus on a little bit more mobility, a little bit more strength, you know. I was a quarterback for football, so it gave my arm a little bit of a break. But I feel if I played, you know, outfield or, you know, shortstop or just maybe a different position where there was more of a focus on sprint speed, jumps, like, where there's just a little bit more of a focus on that, you know, I probably would have continued playing soccer a little bit longer just because it was great, you know, short versus sprint, you know, great conditioning with that. I definitely don't have any regrets focusing on baseball a little early, but if I could go back, I may have, you know, stuck with a couple of sports a little bit longer, maybe into my freshman or sophomore year of high school, before I really focused on baseball.
Mm-hmm. You also grew up at a time when the transition from American Legion to travel baseball was occurring. American Legion traditionally had been the monopoly for high school summer ball, and teams like Boyertown always seemed to be walking away from it. And there were some good programs. I mean, Conestoga had a pretty good program. Downingtown always had a good program. Boyertown was, of course, as I said, the king. But that started to change, you know, in your early years of high school, and you went over to travel baseball. Which was more beneficial for you, and why?
I think Legion just did a great job of developing, but with travel baseball, I was able to go down to the southern states and just get such a huge exposure to not only professional scouts and college scouts, but just to be able to gauge myself against talent from around the country. The thing about Legion is, though it was great and I loved my days playing in it, the pool size was a little bit smaller, so it was harder to gauge how you could stack up against other kids who you would be fighting for their spots for, whether it be for the college or professional ranks. But with the ability to travel and see everyone else up close and in person, I just thought personally that was an invaluable or such a valuable key.
Now you played your high school ball at Conestoga, and as we said earlier, in 2014, you and a teammate, Jake Buffo, another very talented player who I believe went on to pitch at Hofstra. Is that right?
Yeah.
You and Jake pitched the Pioneers to another state title game. This one was against LaSalle High School, a power in the Catholic League and actually just in high school baseball in general. You started that game, went 7 strong innings before you were lifted with the score tied at 2-2. Unfortunately, Conestoga lost. What do you remember from that experience, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I just remember it being such an intense game. It ended up going into extra innings. So everyone was contributing the best they could. I remember Brian Ogan, one of my friends who I still train with today. He was one of our leading hitters that year, but even him, he put down the sacrifice bunt to move the runner over when needed. So everyone was contributing as much as they could. Just an intense, emotional, fun game to be a part of. So there was a lot of takeaways. It was just so much riding on a game, even though we ended up coming away with a loss. Just to develop, I think that's when my passion for the game even grew just that much more, just because, that was the most intense game that I've been a part of, something that you play for through the entire season to get to that state championship. So for everything to come together towards fruition, definitely just helped develop my passion for the game.
That's really interesting that you say that, because a lot of kids would just allow the sadness of the loss affect them. But as you said, that intensity kind of reminds you of the what was it, Game 5 of the 1975 World Series, when Pete Rose comes up to Carlton Fisk. The Reds and the Red Sox were in that, and they were in a dead heat for that game. And Rose says to Fisk, "This is great. It doesn't matter who wins. This is great." And I can't imagine that would be the equivalent of that state championship game, especially when you were playing in Quad A. I mean, those games don't get any more intense. B, in your senior year, your fastball was clocked in the mid-90s, and you were throwing an 84-mile-an-hour curve. North Carolina made you their top recruit, but you were also drafted by the San Francisco Giants in the 36th round. There must have been a lot of pressure to decide which path to take, especially since Division I recruiters are known to make promises that they cannot keep, among them scholarship money. What was the college recruitment process like for you, and how did you navigate some of the challenges?
Yeah, a lot of it came down to growing up with two older brothers. When they were going through their college process, my family, we took a kind of a tour down the East Coast to visit a bunch of different schools, and we ended up making a stop at UNC, where I eventually committed to out of high school. And that was kind of when I originally fell in love with the college. I just loved everything about it. The campus was gorgeous. Baseball program was extremely strong. So when it came my time to commit to a college, I just wanted the best baseball opportunity I could, along with the best schooling opportunity that I could. And just from my own personal experience and seeing the campus firsthand, I knew UNC was my number one choice going out of high school. So I was fortunate enough for everything to align and be able to receive a scholarship from the coaches. So going into it, I definitely had a school in mind and just kept trying to work towards that goal for it to become a reality.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you went there, UNC is a phenomenal program. You competed for a spot on the starting rotation, but you ended up just pitching 4 total innings out of the bullpen your freshman year. What happened?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just came down to the fall season is a big part of, that's when the coaches get their eyes on you, and that's when you kind of try to earn that spring roster spot, especially for incoming freshmen. That's the most exposure you'll ever get to that coaching staff. So I think I just didn't have as strong of a fall season as I would have hoped. I definitely struggled with command, and that's kind of when you build that trust factor with the coaches, and it just wasn't there on my end. So it definitely took a while to get a couple of opportunities, and like you said, it only ended up amounting to 4 innings. Definitely a heartbreaking time, but I knew I had to kind of do what I felt was best in order to get the opportunity that I needed. So I ended up trying to look elsewhere after my freshman year.
Mm-hmm. The admirable thing is that not as many people would make that kind of dedication or would have the courage to go elsewhere, especially playing at a school like that. The following summer, after your freshman year, you earned a starting role with the Bourne Braves in the elite Cape Cod Summer League. You recorded 39 strikeouts in 27 innings. You continued the impressive performance at the State College of Florida at Sarasota, where you recorded 133 strikeouts in 85 innings, averaged 14.03 strikeouts per 9 innings, and posted a 2.53 ERA in 15 starts. Those numbers made you a legitimate first-round prospect. B, what changes did you make to get yourself there?
Yeah, for me, it all definitely started in the Cape Cod League. So much of it came down to the trust and, that the coaches put in me. So I ended up becoming an integral part of the bullpen, and I ended up becoming kind of the guy out of the pen. So just to have that kind of trust put in me from the coaching staff, it made me believe more in myself that I could do whatever the team needed of me. So, definitely just a boost in confidence, helped everything just flow a lot easier from my game. Couple of minor tweaks with my pitches. I definitely started to focus so much on my curveball. That was kind of my strength put away pitch, and it just really became solidified its spot in my repertoire in the Cape Cod League. So I switched to a spike curve grip, which just allowed me to throw it a little bit harder and had a little bit tighter and later break. So just a couple of minor tweaks, but so much of it was just the confidence level I had in myself just continued to grow. And then when I eventually went down to SCF down in Florida, it was just kind of a carryover effect from the Cape Cod League. I knew I was able to do it. I knew I was able to compete at a higher level. I knew I was able to succeed at a higher level. So much of it just came down to confidence for me, really.
In 2017, the Cubs made you their first pick in the June amateur draft. Your first 2 years of pro ball, you posted some impressive stats, including a team-high 90 Ks you posted for the South Bend Cubs last season and pitched some real gems over the course of the season. But knowing that you've always been a perfectionist, what have been the biggest adjustments you've had to make at Class A, both as a pitcher and as a person?
Yeah, I mean, coming from SCF, I just had some great coaches down there. My pitching coach, Donnie Everett, he just really helped, or Donnie Robinson, sorry. He just really helped simplify everything for me. So then when I got to pro ball, I just kind of felt that I needed to do more. So I kept trying to tinker around with my mechanics a little bit, you know, in order to do more, in order to be better. And with all these different changes, it ended up becoming too much, and I kind of lost my identity, or I lost my base mechanics. So I ended up trying to take on more than I ever should have in order to, or rather than just pitching the way that got me drafted in the first place. So for me, I saw some success, but so much of it was a roller coaster season. You know, I'd go out and throw really well, and after I threw really well, I thought, well, this might be a good time to try to focus on some of my other goals. So I might make a little bit of a change, and then, you know, it kind of backfires. So then I'd try to take back what I had done, and, you know, so it was a big up and down season, but the big takeaway for me is I just learned what worked and what didn't work. You know, I was able to pitch against better competition, you know, mix around different pitches, but it was just a big learning experience in general.
Yeah, Don Robinson was a pivotal influence in your career, it seems, because he continued what you learned on the Cape, and I don't know how much you know about his background, but he went through some similar changes in terms of mechanics, but also as a mental approach to the game when he played for the Pirates. But it would seem to me that, you know, that success, you know, would carry over. The issue is when you go from rookie ball to Class A, you're dealing with so many different coaches, and they all got to be on the same page if you're going to succeed. How have you been able to navigate that? I mean, have you found that some of these guys are different? Are they on the same page? I know that Joe Madden really has made a strong effort, particularly with the hitting, to give uniform instruction throughout the farm system. You know, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely so true. Each year you're under a new pitching coach. Even the past couple of years, or since my time with the Cubs, we've had revolving pitching coordinators. So even the high up pitching guys change. But this past year I was under Brian Lawrence, who was another ex-big leaguer, and, you know, he was awesome for me. He just was very similar to Donnie. He just had a very calm, level head about everything. You know, bad outings didn't matter, just as long as we were kind of progressing towards a goal. So he just helped, again, just solidify and kind of ground me at times when times got tough. So the thing that I've found with the different pitching coaches, pitching coordinators, you just have to know what works for you. And, you know, you might make some tweaks, but as long as they're gradual, I wouldn't do anything rash and in some hopes that you might dramatically improve, because it just doesn't work that way. So you need to know what works for you and understand what works for you, because then you'll be able to talk through the issues when they arise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I was impressed with this last season, I mean, you know, obviously every Class A pitcher has his ups and downs, but it just seemed to me from listening to those broadcasts when you pitched, when you gave yourself the chance just to focus and, you know, and get the fly ball and the ground ball outs, then the strikeouts came. Whereas, you know, if you were going to strike out somebody, it wasn't necessarily as great a success. But you clearly know yourself, and you know, it was a season of adjustment, but it was a good season for you. It really was. And those 90 Ks, that's very impressive to chalk up to Class A. So, you know, congratulations and keep it going, B. Look, last question. What advice would you give to those talented student athletes who will get drafted and try to make the jump from either the high school or the junior college ranks to Class A?
Yeah, I would definitely say understand what works for you. You'll come across so many different coaches, so many different players indeed are also who, want to help. Everyone wants to help. So you'll get so many different ideas thrown at you. And if you don't know what works for you or the way that you go about things, it's so easy to get caught up in the suggestions of everyone because everyone has an opinion. But as long as you know what works for you, you can kind of filter through all the information. So that would just be the biggest thing is that I could say is just figure out what works for you so you can take stuff that already, kind of pick apart some of the information to enhance yourself rather than, kind of changing yourself year after year. If you ended up going to those higher levels, you got there for a reason, so just don't forget that.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, thanks. Thanks for being with us, B, and good luck with the upcoming season. You've worked hard over the years and deserve all the success that the future holds for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Philly fans, for tuning in. See you next week for another podcast of Philadelphia Baseball, Past, Present, and Personal. This is Bill Kashatus, rounding third and heading home on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.